Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome back to the Money Council platform. And I'm so excited about the next few videos that we'll be sharing on our platforms on YouTube, Instagram, etc. I've been attending a masterclass in Islamic Finance over the past day or two, depending on when we're obviously putting this post up. Particularly in Islamic Finance, and I'm very excited to have an esteemed guest with me to look at the topics that was covered during this masterclass. So stay tuned as we'll be going into the first session.
حي على الفلاح.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Money Council. As in our introduction, I mentioned that we have a special guest with me to look at Islamic Finance, the masterclass that have been covered by the organization called IConsult Africa. And in the studio with me is Dr. Ziyaad Mohamed, the chairman of IConsult. Assalamu alaikum, Dr. Ziyaad.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
So excited to have you with us, firstly in Cape Town, South Africa, your home country. You're now residing in Malaysia, right. Associate professor at one of the Islamic Finance universities in Malaysia, and also the chairman of IConsult Africa, a Shariah advisory firm that is based in Southern Africa. You've been the guest speaker of the masterclasses, and one of the themes that we like to look at is value-based intermediation in Islamic banking or Islamic finance. Those were one of the masterclasses you've covered. I think for the benefit of our viewers on the Money Council and IConsult viewers as well, is to firstly understand what this value-based intermediation is all about.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Value-based intermediation is really a concept that is well known. It has a strong history, but perhaps the terminology is just new. Value-based intermediation, or VBI, yes, was established by Bank Negara Malaysia, which is the Central Bank of Malaysia, several years ago, and that's around 2017, in order to drive responsible banking and finance, first from the Islamic finance sector, but then to the entire financial sector. The objective is really built on certain underpinning thrusts to be able to establish a responsible approach to financial intermediation.
Yes.
To ensure that when there is leverage of a customer, the customer understands really what he is getting into.
Right.
For the entrepreneur to be encouraged and motivated to build his business,
yes,
not being supervised heavily with a bank demanding debt, and when the customer can't pay back, then there's the stringent action on collateral. So it's more of a building and empowerment, and VBI really focuses on extending the ESG criteria, really establishing a sustainability set of banking and intermediary functions that are based on the maqasid al-shar'iyya, or the objectives of the Islamic law.
Makes sense, Doctor. And what I pick up from what you're suggesting is that there's obviously a strong relation to the banking sector, and I guess an extension to financial services as a whole. We know that the capitalist sort of mindset is that it's all about profits,
yes,
from the shareholder's point of view.
Yes.
If we look at what you would say responsible banking, what is the connection to this VBI initiative or concept?
That's a fair question. Value-based intermediation is all about responsible banking.
Right.
But what it does is it creates a very clear framework for what needs to be achieved, and then a measurement of determining whether you've actually achieved that.
Yes.
So this assessment framework, which is the output of the VBI structure, really determines whether a bank is growing responsibly. Because this is not something that you can simply flip into overnight.
Yes.
Remember that banks finance a variety of sectors. And those sectors come in from fossil fuels, and they come in from some irresponsible activities.
Yes.
To ask a bank to stop all financing of something that is legal, but it may cause harm in the long run, well, then that is difficult to determine unless you have your facts.
Yes.
So VBI really establishes that framework of assessment to determine whether the banking is done responsibly. In other words, are you building a sector that is going to create more harm, or are you building a sector that's going to create more benefit for society?
Right. How different is it to ESG? I mean, is it a layer much deeper than that? Because to me, it also sounds like it's a lot to do with culture,
Yes.
mindset, and this is within the banking environment, or banks at least.
Yeah, in ESG, a lot of the focus tends to be on the E,
Yes.
on the environment.
Yes.
So it focuses on green, in other words, renewable energy, reducing fossil fuels, but VBI really creates a more holistic approach.
Okay.
And that holistic approach looks at community empowerment, and it looks at good self-governance and best conduct and entrepreneurial mindset. So those aspects add on to the element of ESG. It does not negate the existing approach to ESG. It's just that ESG has been focused on green alone. VBI is not. VBI is spread much broader. And you're right, there is this cultural aspect to VBI because it is based on the 5 key protections, the preservations, the maqasidu Shariah. So that has been translated into an operational metric, which has not really been done before.
Yes.
Prior to this, it's been a maqasid approach that is philosophical in nature. But it's been difficult to really translate that into something that's functional in nature. And VBI is one of the attempts, at least within the industrial sector, to achieve that.
So it's trying to set standards that are measurable, would you say?
Very much so, and it's impact driven.
Right.
Yeah.
What are some of the key drivers behind VBI and why there is this need for us to see impact beyond the E, as you mentioned?
Yeah. So ultimately, Islamic finance is about risk sharing.
Yes.
And risk sharing is also coupled with several other aspects like adl, or justice and fairness in transactions, and wasatiyah, or moderation, and responsible trusteeship and amana, and men acting as khalif. And this khilafah, or vicegerency deputation, means that yes, environment needs to be protected, but also the interaction with community needs to be protected. And it really moves CSR, corporate social responsibility, into the mainstream. Prior to this, CSR has always been on the sideline. There's a 1% or 2% of revenue, and we'll give that to charity. Now it becomes within the DNA of the financial institution. Value-based approaches and responsible banking are now expanded. So as far as the key drivers are concerned, through risk sharing, the first pillar is the entrepreneurial mindset. It's to encourage businesses to develop.
Yes.
It's to grow them, but it's to work with them so that they understand how business strategies develop, how they can minimize their risk exposure, how can they be sustainable in the long run. And that's a crucial element. The second element is community empowerment. That's to ensure that all the stakeholders are well protected. They build together with the financial institution, because the financial institution sees the community as future customers and a ground, a community, a society of where their own customers can gain support and grow in the long run.
Yes.
The third and the fourth drivers are primarily focused on conduct. So it's best conduct and good self-governance. And as we know, building on the maqasid means that we look at the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ has come to perfect good character.
Yes.
And the perfection of good character means that the conduct, our business conduct, must be in excellence.
Yes.
in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us at all times. And that ihsan, that best conduct, has now been translated into measurables. For example, what is your relationship with your employee? Have they made any complaints against you? Has the customer complained against you? How frequent are those complaints? What is the root cause of those complaints? So understanding that really changes the intermediary function and raises the standard to a very responsible juristic entity.
Yes.
And finally, the good self-governance says that we're not based on what is the minimum requirement.
Right.
The minimum is what the regulator sets as what we should achieve, but we're focused on best practice.
Yes.
We do things because we want to see a sustainable, long-term development and empowerment of the entire society with the protection and preservation of the environment and the people. So it's this melting of these four key strategic objectives.
Right.
Entrepreneurial mindset, community empowerment, best conduct, and good self-governance.
Dr. Ziyaad, from your point of view,
Now,
who's responsible or whose responsibility does this sit with to drive these key pillars? Is it the board of directors? Is it throughout the business? Is it the Shariah supervisory board?
so when we say value-based intermediation, it means responsible banking through maqasid.
Yes.
Responsible meaning everyone is responsible.
Right,
The
right.
customer, the corporate, the regulator, the bank, the Sharia supervisory board,
Right.
the board itself, they are all there to achieve a unified approach to success for all. It is not a responsibility that lies on the board of directors alone
Yes.
or on the Sharia board. It is a joint effort to achieve a unified approach to community empowerment and protection.
Sure. You have exposure to the Malaysian market, and in your masterclass you've looked at a few case studies from a South African context, and perhaps some of the lessons that could be shared with our viewers that are perhaps in the Islamic banking space, that are Sharia or Islamic fund managers,
Yes.
takafu operators, etc. What are some of the lessons that we could perhaps adopt from the Malaysian market to the SA market?
Some of the lessons that we learned whilst implementing VBI was that banks want to focus on their business.
Yes.
And focusing on business means looking at profits, looking after customers, but looking after profits as well. By actually translating that responsibility into something that would mean long-term profits and long-term gains, we found that banking practitioners understood the importance of implementing this VBI. So initially there was some resistance, but as time went by, there was an understanding that if we do this,
Yes.
it's really just going to benefit us.
Yes.
So some approaches that South Africa can consider is what Malaysian banks did. They applied something called a CVI strategic approach. Corporate value intent
Right.
is what they attacked first. They said that vision, mission, and strategic objectives need to integrate a concept of shared prosperity and benefit for all. They also developed social finance and sustainability departments within the bank. They also developed, one bank had developed a digital platform for charity
Right.
and brought in a university and a fintech platform to be able to distribute those funds and maximize the impact and efficiency of those funds. So these little efforts have really gone a long way in a very short space of time. And this is only at the first level. At the next level, there's a serious focus on climate change
Yes.
from a VBI perspective. So that's something that South African banks and insurance companies can also look at.
There's so much for us to discuss on this topic, Dr. Ziyaad, but thank you for your time and some of the insight around VBI and how banks can implement these initiatives within their structures. So catch us on the next episode where we will be looking at fintech in Islamic finance with Dr. Ziyaad. And if you want to check out anything on IConsult Africa, you can visit their website for Shariah advisory and research. So do join us for the next episode. Shukran. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
حي على الفلاح.